Welcome back to WNY Athletics High School Sports Weekly. I'm Frank Wolf, and this segment we're going to be talking about wrestling, high school wrestling, with Matt O'Rourke, who's been covering Section 6, doing a bang-up job for us. You've seen him on Twitter. Matt, what's your Twitter handle?
It's at Matt_O'Rourke1.
And we've been retweeting everything he's been doing. Last weekend, you were in Lancaster for the Section 6 duels meet, where large school Lancaster and small school Falconer won. You did previews for us, a wrap-up and everything else, which was great. You had predictions. There was a lot of engagement, so I thank you for that. Did a great job. And this weekend, I should say, you're heading out to Syracuse to see Lancaster and Falconer, see how they do at the state tournament. Last year they had the tournament, but they didn't send those teams to state. This year they are.
That's right. This is the first year of the New York State Public High School Athletic Association state dual meet tournament. Last year was the first Section 6 dual meet tournament. Some other sections have had dual meet tournaments now for near 25 years that have been very successful. The first 2 years of the Section 6 tournament have also been very successful. The public and the fans and the coverage is great. It's a great day full of the top 8 teams in big schools and small schools in Section 6 going against each other. And the fact that now there's a state dual meet tournament to determine the true dual meet champion is going to be great, I think, for the future. Pennsylvania does it. A lot of the other powerful wrestling states do it. And we won't have to rely on a state ranking anymore, I guess. We'll actually figure it out on the mat.
I was talking to Niagara Wheatfield head coach Rick Swenny, and he said this gives a lot of kids the opportunity to go represent their school at states where they may not have had that luxury, because it always comes down to individual and those wild cards and things of that nature. But really good wrestlers that should have a chance to compete at states, they will now actually have that chance.
Mm-hmm. That's a great analysis by Coach Sweeney. And if anybody were to have a good analysis like that, it'd be him. He knows what he's talking about. He's absolutely right, and it gives great teams. Some teams aren't very good but have a couple great individuals or one great individual. Some teams are great but have all about the same wrestlers, or maybe some really standouts but a supporting cast that might not go to states. This is going to be an opportunity for teams like that to show their stuff.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on in Section 6 wrestling. But just a little background on Matt. Matt's not actually from Western New York. Matt grew up, I believe, in Boonville, New York?
Yep.
Route 12?
Yep.
Okay. I know a little bit of my way around New York a little bit. Matt's father was a wrestling coach out at what schools?
South Louis and Adirondack.
Section 3. And I hear he's going into the Wrestling Hall of Fame. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so he got nominated and selected for the Section 3 Wrestling Hall of Fame, which is pretty cool. He's going to be the first one to represent South Louis, which is also his alma mater, in the Section 3 Wrestling Hall of Fame. I guess he got me into the sport, of course, obviously being my father. What was pretty remarkable is the time period he coached. In his league alone, there's 5 or 6 other Section 6 of a league of about 12 to 13 schools. Oh. There's about 5 or 6 other Section 3 Hall of Fame coaches that came out of that same time period, including 2 guys who are National Hall of Famers, and they operated in not only the same league but the same county. So to bring a program up to challenge the perennial powerhouses like that was a big accomplishment, and he's been recognized for that.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Getting back to Section 6,
Mm-hmm.
Lancaster and Falcon are heading out to Syracuse. How do you think they'll fare at the state level this weekend?
Well, I luckily I got their pools and everything right here. I did a little prediction for the pools, and the big schools, both tournaments got reseeded at least once or twice. The big school tournament got reseeded maybe 2 or 3 times. So Lancaster ended up getting drawn in with the second seed, Section 9 powerhouse Minisink Valley, and Section 3 wildcard team CBA/Jamesville DeWitt. Horseheads, my bad. Sorry, Section 4 wildcard Horseheads. Take that back. So I like Lancaster taking on Horseheads. I think that's a very winnable match for the Legends. They're going to have their hands full with Minisink Valley. Minisink Valley is the top-ranked large school in the state. Undefeated, probably, I think they're about 25, 27-0 maybe right now. That's going to be a tough match for them, but Lancaster looked good. I watched them last week on Wednesday against Clarence. I watched them this week. I had actually did a prediction, and I picked them to lose by a couple points to Grand Island, and they ended up completely reversing my score, and I had to eat crow on that one. But they come on strong at the end of the season because they're a good program and they're good wrestlers, and they know what they're doing.
I know when you think about Lancaster, the first name that comes to mind is Joe Andreessen, who was obviously one of the best football players in Western New York. We knew he was a great wrestler. Individually, how do you think Joe can do this year, not just in duels, but throughout the state tournament when they go as individuals?
Well, he's been the leader for that team all year long. This weekend, he normally wrestles 195. They weighed him in at 220, and he wrestled at 285. And he took on, he beat the big man, number one ranked 285 pounder from Grand Island, Jaquan Johnson. He beat him for the second time this season. So that just shows you how important that Joe is to that team. That he's able to go up 2 weight classes, almost 100 pounds more than what he weighs to take on other teams' good wrestlers. He's preseason, New York Wrestling News had him ranked number 2 in the state at 195, and that was just behind a young man from John Glenn High School in Long Island who took 5th, who also placed in the state last year. He may be Section 6's best bet in large schools to claim gold at the state tournament.
Cool. Anyone else from Lancaster? Like, who are the other guys on that Legends team that we should know?
Well, they've got 2 other defending. Andreessen isn't a defending section champion. He was a wild card to states last year. They have 2 defending champions, Parker Rosler at 113 and Ryan Stencil at 152.
Okay. And Falconer, a small school heading out there. How do you see them doing this weekend?
I like Falconer. I picked Falconer to make it to the semifinal. They are in a group with Section 11 small school champion, dual meet champion Mount Sinai. They're the number 2 seed, and Section 10's Governor.
Okay. Governor, that's way up there.
That's right. It's north of
That's
Watertown.
way up there.
There's only a couple teams in Section 10 and there's only a couple schools, and there's only a couple teams that actually wrestle. Governors, it's deceiving. You got to be careful with them because they're usually, it's weird because they're one of only a handful of small schools up there, but they're always good at wrestling. They wrestle all summer long. They wrestle all year long. But still, I like Falconer over Mount Sinai, and I like them over Governor into the semis.
Excellent. Other tournaments going on this weekend?
Yeah, so this weekend is the state dual meet tournament and also the CHSAA duels, the Catholic High School Athletic Association duels at St. Anthony's High School in Huntington, Long Island.
Okay.
I believe St. Francis, Joe's, and Canisius I believe they're all going to that.
Okay.
There's also a Kenton tournament locally,
Yep.
and some other ones. I tweeted them out on my Twitter handle at Matt O'Rourke1.
Obviously I can't make it out to Syracuse, but Kenton would be a nice tournament for me to go to.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's a good local tournament. A lot of teams. Some of the teams, I believe Pioneer's going to go to it. Pioneer was they've been number 1 ranked small school in Western New York for pretty much all season. But I don't think that they had it fully solidified on their schedule yet. Keeping in mind the duels and the possibility of winning it and going to the state dual meet tournament.
Okay.
Yeah.
Individually, what wrestlers who should we be following or paying attention to that will give us a good opportunity at Section 6 at the state tournament?
Well, for big schools, you got Andreessen. He's having an awesome season. He had a great football season, and he carried that right over into the wrestling season. I like Willie McDougald from Niagara Falls. Took 6th in the state last year. Was a number 2 ranked 132 pounder in big schools coming into the season, just behind Justin Vines from Wantagh, who was a defending state champion. Justin McDougald was a state finalist last year. He was the only finalist for Section 6 big schools last year. He's gonna have his hands full at 126. He was gonna try to make 120, but I believe the consensus is now with the weigh-ins he's gonna be at 126. Defending section champ, defending section finalist. He's behind preseason. He was ranked behind Vespa from Monroe Woodbury, and then one of the top high school wrestlers in the country, in Adam Buzziello from Eastport South Manor.
Wow. And then he's at Niagara Wheatfield.
That's right.
Okay.
Justin McDougald's Niagara Wheatfield. Willie McDougald, Niagara Falls.
Okay.
And then. So for small schools, and then I have a couple guys. Warren McDougald took 6th in the state last year. That's the brother of Justin McDougald. He's back at 145. And then in big schools, my man Jaquan Johnson from Grand Island took third in the section last year, but he's been the top big guy in 285 all season this year. In small schools.
Getting back to Lancaster, Grand Island, they met earlier in the year.
Yes.
Grand Island was not 100% when they first met.
Yeah, they were missing some guys. They were missing.
Okay.
I know at least they were missing Danny Embledge, who was a section finalist for them last year. They ended up, that was a non-league match. They're NFL, ECIC Lancaster, so Lancaster showed up, won by 2 points. So that was a good match earlier in the season, but yeah.
What are some of the other schools around Western New York that we should have our eye on as well?
Okay, well, Lancaster, clearly Grand Island, Wheatfield had a good showing this weekend. They've been coming on strong towards the end of the season. They took third at the duels. They beat Frontier. I would watch out for Frontier. They've got a full lineup. They're well coached, and they wrestle very intelligently on the mat. Clarence obviously is always good. Hamburg, Jamestown, there's teams like that for large schools. For small schools, obviously Falconer, Akron, Alden upset Pioneer in the semis last weekend,
Okay.
which was pretty cool.
Was that a real upset too? Would you consider?
I would say so. Yeah, Akron Alden came in as the 6th seed. They beat Iroquois, the 3 seed, in the first round, and then they beat the 2nd seeded Pioneer in the semis. And they look tough doing it. They got a lot of tough individuals, and they wrestle as a cohesive unit. Newfane won the Niagara Orleans League. Olean and Falconer actually wrestled tonight, Wednesday. Whoever wins that one will be one step closer to the Cattaraugus Chautauqua Athletic Association Division I title. And then after that, I would say Chautauqua Lake, Fredonia, Randolph, Portville, some of those tough southern tier small schools.
How do you get all this information? I know there's armdrag.com and a couple other websites, but who do you go to for information?
Well, I go to Armdrag, obviously, so shout out to some of my sources. Armdrag, Wrestling Review of Western New York does a good job putting together just Section 6 only, integrated big school, small school, team rankings, and individual rankings. CNYWrestling.com, my guys back home in Central New York. Long Island Wrestling Association, they cover all of the Long Island events in sections 11 and 8, and they also put out all of the Catholic schools rankings as well. New York Wrestling News has a lot of great stories and individual and team PowerPoint rankings, and then New York State Sports Writers Association, and then of course the NISFA.org, where there's always great resources on there.
Nice.
Small schools and all.
And of course now with Matt contributing to WNY Athletics, we have great wrestling reports from you. So don't be afraid to check our website out, and Matt will send you on where to go to get information on other sections of the state. Matt, what else is going on in the world of wrestling at Section 6?
Well, I want to briefly go over the small schools too. I got to give love to the small schools. I'm a small school guy, so I guess maybe in terms of who to watch out for in small schools, we're looking at Falconer actually in an interesting statistic returns the fifth most points from the state individual tournament last year. They got 3 guys who are returning state place finishers. They got Dylan Grayow,
Okay.
took 4th in the state last year. Dan Torres took 5th in the state last year, and Corey Keefe took 6th in the state last year. So they're all the top guys back at their weights this year. 152 and 160, and Grayow and Torres are the top-ranked guys.
Is there a guy named Giuseppe out there?
Yeah, Giuseppe Hoos.
Yeah.
So Giuseppe is he was preseason ranked in the top 5 in the state. He's
I remember hearing his name last year.
What did he do? I'm looking at it right now. So he's been going back and forth with Zach Trim from Maple Grove. They've had their own little rivalry this year. So
Nice.
Trim is a defending champ. Hoos beat Trim at the Morales tournament in Falconer, so that'll be interesting. There's a lot of good small school individual rivalries, especially in the upper weights right now, with guys that were ranked preseason in the state or guys that are returning state place finishers and who's beating who. It's happened a lot. Another guy to look out for, I guess, other than Torres at 160 is Chautauqua Lake's Bryce Rowe. He's got a win over Torres, who's the defending section champ, and then maybe even Robbie Pequeen from Akron Alden had an interesting match with Torres this weekend. He was up 5-1 and ended up losing 11-9 in overtime, but it's definitely someone that is, may mix it up.
You mentioned off camera. You mentioned a kid named Robbie Penhollow.
Yeah, that's a classic. Penn Hollow is right now the top ranked 70-pounder in Western New York.
Okay.
He's been an awesome addition to those upper weights for Falconer, who are just lights out. Watched him last weekend. He's tough. Penn Hollow is for anybody who knows Western New York wrestling, is a classic Falconer wrestling name. Yeah, he's a great addition. They may add he's eyeing a section championship as well.
These names you mentioned, they're so familiar because we heard them all fall. They're all football players. Penn Hollow, McQueen, Andreessen, obviously. All these kids that you keep. The kid from Chautauqua Lake you just mentioned.
Yep.
But talk about Jacob Sarl from Akron.
I know he's wrestling right now at 170. I can't say I've seen Akron Alden wrestle too much this season just because of where I've ended up, but he should challenge Penn Hollow for the Division II title if they end up being at the same weight, which I'm assuming they are at 170.
A couple weeks ago we were talking, and you mentioned that kids have to have so many matches and to qualify. Are they there? Because we had all those cancellations and postponements, tournaments. Tournaments canceled for weather-related issues. Teams couldn't make it to Lockport.
Yeah.
Does that have a major effect on these kids qualifying?
Well, if the coaches, if they're able to find events and they're willing to go to them on a lot of things have been happening on weekdays. There's been Monday tournaments. Okay. There's been weekday, like 2 or 3 team round or 3 or 4 team round robins, and that they just got to get the points in, especially for some of the young men that are contending for section titles, not only here but throughout New York State. This is happening as well, especially upstate New York. So I can't think of any situations where anybody's got any points to spare, but I'm sure it's definitely for scheduling issues. It's definitely been a problem this season.
We got Section 6 under wraps. Monsignor Martin St. Francis beat St. Joe's last weekend. What does that do for the Catholics? Because I don't think Canisius and St. Francis have wrestled
Yes,
yet.
they did.
They did wrestle.
St. Francis won.
They did?
Yes.
Okay.
So Joe's St. Francis came down last week they wrestled last Friday. It was a very good match. I was very surprised. It was the first time I've been to a Monsignor Martin match. It was very good. No forfeits. Good wrestling. St. Francis came away with a win, and they wrestled Canisius tonight. And so last week wouldn't have secured the league title for either of those teams. With Canisius still wrestling St. Francis tonight, but St. Francis won, so they outright won the Monsignor Martin League.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
Excellent. And you said their tournament is this weekend?
There's the Catholic schools dual meet tournament is this weekend.
Okay.
So coming up soon will be the Monsignor Martin All League tournament, which is just the 5 wrestling schools, Monsignor Martin teams here, and then they'll do Catholic states, and then the winners of the Catholic states tournament will go to the NISFA Division I tournament.
Okay.
In February.
Well, we've covered a lot of wrestling topics. I should say, in 2 weekends, not this coming Saturday, but the following Saturday, you're going to join Tony, Roger, and myself on Inside High School Sports. Mm-hmm. You and Pete Kennedy from St. Joe's. Mm-hmm. So you guys who love watching us on Inside High School Sports every Saturday morning, or listening to us, I should say, on WGR 550 from 10 to 11, you can get your wrestling fix Saturday morning. I believe that's February 3rd.
Mm-hmm. Same day as the 5 class tournaments as well, so it's a big day in wrestling. I'll come in that morning, and then I'll be right out to the class tournaments after that. Well,
man, I mean, your wealth of knowledge when it comes to wrestling, it's a sport I really enjoy watching, and I'm looking to get out to maybe the Kenton tournament this weekend, and then who knows after that. Mm-hmm. But thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to your tweets on Saturday, and we should have your preview of the duels up on WNY Athletics tomorrow, which would be Thursday, and this show won't be out there until Friday, so either way, check out WNY Athletics for Matt O'Rourke's previews and recaps from this weekend's dual tournament in Syracuse, New York. For Frank Wolf of WNY Athletics and Matt O'Rourke, that concludes this particular segment for Wrestling on WNY Athletics Inside High School Sports Weekly.